Hello everybody and welcome to True Psych Ward. My name is Dr. B. Today we are going to talk about a case that is currently in front of the Superior Court of the State of California. This case was filed on May 25th, 2018 by Isiah James Silva, and it is versus Courtney Love and several other defendants that we're going to get into in just a little bit. I'm going to be reading from the official complaint for damages filed in front of the court. The plaintiff in this case is Isiah James Silva. He's a musician and a frontman for the rock band The Eries. Silva is the ex-husband of Frances Bean Cobain, and Cobain is the only child of musicians Kurt Cobain and defendant Courtney Love. Courtney Michelle Love, also known as Courtney Love Cobain and Courtney Michelle Harrison, is a former musician and was the mother-in-law of Silva. Love has a documented history of criminal drug use and violence, including arrests for assault with a deadly weapon and battery. Next is defendant Osama Nicholas Lutfi, also known as Sam Lutfi. And Sam is Love's business manager, infamous self-proclaimed Hollywood fixer, and illicit drug supplier to Love and Cobain. Lutfi has a documented history of insinuating himself into the personal and business affairs of female entertainers such as Britney Spears, Amanda Bynes, and Lindsay Lohan. Lutfi also has a long documented history of drug involvement, threats, violence, stalking, and harassment, which has resulted in at least 6 restraining orders in Los Angeles and Orange counties. Next defendant is Ross Fleming Butler, and he is an actor and a close associate and agent of Lutfi. And Butler acted as a courier for illicit drugs supplied to Love and Cobain. In June 2016, Butler was Lutfi's roommate. According to the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office, Butler could not be questioned by police in this matter because he fled to Canada immediately afterwards. Next up is defendant Jan Yutman, and Jan is a professional chauffeur doing business as Blue Velvet LLC. Yutman is a close associate and agent of Lutfi. Yutman has a long and disturbing history of criminal conduct and arrests, including but not limited to arrests for crimes of violence, drugs, illegal possession of ammunition, solicitation of criminal conduct, and possession of poisonous or harmful substances. Next is defendant John James Nazarian, and he's a private investigator doing business as Esquire International, the agency, as well as Nazarian and Associates. Nazarian bills himself as the scum of Hollywood and boasts of a celebrity clientele. Nazarian has produced and posted instructional videos which encourage women to stage fake crime scenes and make false reports to the police in order to have their spouses falsely arrested and removed from the house. Quote, "How to throw your husband out, divorce advice," end quote. In another video, Nazarian characterizes his work on behalf of the wealthy. Quote, "The rich and powerful always want their pound of flesh, and we kind of go out and collect it for them," close quote. And then Nazarian also says, quote, "You pick your worst lawyer that you know, we're 10 floors below him. That's what we get paid to do." Nazarian is an associate of Courtney Love, and she has employed his services in the past. Next is defendant Mark Gaines, and he is Courtney Love's attorney and has also previously represented Lutfi. Finally, we have defendant Michael Evan Schenk, also known as Michael Vega, and Vega Schenk. He is a musician who, at the time of this complaint, was employed by Frances Cobain as her personal assistant. In this case, defendants Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman entered into a criminal conspiracy to commit trespass, burglary, home invasion robbery, assault, battery, kidnapping, and murder against Frances Cobain's estranged husband, Isiah Silva. The primary objective of their conspiracy was to locate and take possession of a guitar believed to be worth millions of dollars, which was gifted to Silva by his wife, Frances Cobain, on January 8, 2014, only 6 months prior to their June 29th marriage. The conspirators' second objective was to remove Silva from the home on Curson Avenue and end any potential legal claims Silva might have to the property, spousal support, and trust. The complaint alleges that in the early morning hours of June 3, 2016, in furtherance of their conspiracy, defendants Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman did burglarize, rob, assault, batter, sexually batter, kidnap, and attempt to murder Silva at his North Curson Avenue residence in West Hollywood, California. When Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman's plan to murder Silva was frustrated by unforeseen complications, Love's attorney Gaines joined their criminal conspiracy in an effort to fulfill the objectives of the conspiracy by means of other than murder. Beginning in the pre-dawn hours of June 3, 2016, and continuing through June 4th, Love, Lutfi, Butler, Yutman, and Gaines acted in concert to falsely imprison and extort Silva. After June 4th, co-conspirators Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman engaged in a pattern of conduct that included criminal threats, bribes, stalking, intimidation, defamation, extortion, and dissuasion against Silva, his family members, friends, and witnesses favorable to Silva as part of an ongoing campaign of intimidation aimed at evading criminal prosecution and achieving the unsatisfied objectives of their original conspiracy. 20 days later, on June 24, 2016, Love and Lutfi conspired with Nazarian and Schenk to unlawfully wrest control of the Curson Avenue house from Silva, thereby realizing one of the original objectives of the June 3, 2016 criminal conspiracy between Love, Lutfi, Butler, Yutman, and Gaines. In furtherance of the June 24, 2016 conspiracy, Nazarian and Schenk did assault and cause physical injury to Silva's mother while in Silva's presence and with the intent of terrorizing and intimidating Silva. Silva met Cobain on January 8, 2010, after which a dating relationship began. At the time the two met, Silva was working with special needs children at an elementary school in Orange County. He held this position for approximately 8 years while concurrently working in the music industry and developing his music career. Frances Cobain is the only child of two musicians, Kurt Cobain, who is deceased, and defendant Love. In 2011, Cobain and Silva began residing together full-time. Commencing in 2012, according to emails provided to Silva by Cobain, Love's business manager, Lutfi, began surreptitiously providing services for Cobain and Love in trade for favors and loyalty. During the time outlined herein, Lutfi surreptitiously provided narcotics and illicit benzodiazepines to Cobain and Love. Defendant Lutfi and Cobain referred to the drugs as cookies. For example, when the two discussed the need for more narcotics and illicit benzodiazepines. They would communicate in code and say the cookie jar is empty. Pertinent to the issues to be alleged herein is Cobain lived primarily with Love in New York until approximately 2009, when Cobain's grandmother, Wendy O'Connor, and Cobain's aunt, Kimmy Cobain, obtained legal guardianship of Cobain. Thereafter, Frances moved to Los Angeles. At the same time, Wendy O'Connor and Kim Cobain moved from the family home in Washington State and into a home just doors down the street from Cobain on West Knoll in West Hollywood. After dating for a year, Cobain proposed to Silva on July 4, 2011, and in celebration of their engagement, the young couple searched for a home near West Hollywood, selecting and moving into Curzon Avenue residence in West Hollywood. Subsequently, Frances's estranged mother, Courtney Love, rented a home directly across from Wattles Park, a small park within walking distance of Silva and Cobain's Curzon Avenue residence. Lutfi would later claim that he and Butler facilitated Courtney Love's move to this location. Love seemingly moved into her new residence with the intent of smoothing things over with Frances. Soon after her move, Love began texting and soliciting Silva for his help in mending the damaged relationship with her daughter. At about that time, Love sent a text message to Silva imploring him to allow her to introduce him to Lutfi, Love's confidant and business manager. Despite Silva's apprehension due to the infamous reputation that preceded both Lutfi and Love, Silva felt obligated to appease the request of his future mother-in-law, furthering Love's hopes that Silva would broker peace between her and Frances Cobain. Subsequently, Lutfi initiated numerous attempts to insinuate himself with both Cobain and Silva. On May 31, 2012, Lutfi, stating he was a confidant of Love's, solicited Cobain by email requesting that Cobain get to know him and telling her that a relationship would be mutually beneficial. Evidence of Lutfi's idea of a mutually beneficial relationship is illustrated in subsequent emails between Cobain and Lutfi. In one email, Cobain thanked Lutfi for traveling to Mexico, obtaining illicit drugs, and transporting them back to the United States for her and Love's use. In exchange, Cobain insisted on paying Lutfi for any expense incurred during the process of refilling the, quote, cookie jar. Cobain and Silva engaged now for some time, and with Silva still none the wiser that Lutfi had been surreptitiously providing narcotics and illicit benzodiazepines to Cobain, set October 30th, 2013 as their wedding date. However, before the date arrived, Silva became increasingly concerned after witnessing Cobain on a number of occasions meet a car outside of their home, return inside in a suspicious manner, and immediately retreat to the bathroom. When Cobain emerged from the bathroom, she exhibited bizarre, agitated, and abusive behavior. On several occasions, Cobain did not return from the bathroom for long periods of time. On one such occasion, Silva became alarmed and entered the bathroom. He found Cobain passed out on the bathroom floor from an apparent drug overdose. This was not an isolated incident, and as time went by, Silva found Cobain in this condition with greater frequency. Despite Silva's observations, Cobain continued to empathically deny that her behavior and physical condition were drug-related. Silva spent countless sleepless nights monitoring Cobain's breathing and behavior, fearful that she would pass away in her drug-induced deep sleep. On occasion, Silva documented Cobain's behavior with the hope that sharing a video of her conduct with her would convince Cobain that her drug use was a serious and potentially life-threatening problem. Silva hoped that it would motivate Cobain to seek treatment. Unfortunately, Cobain's drug use only escalated and came to the point where Silva was finding Cobain passed out on the bathroom floor just feet from the bed where his 5-year-old daughter, Arlo, was sleeping. Over time and after heart-to-heart discussions, Cobain not only admitted to Silva that she was receiving narcotics and illicit benzodiazepines from Lutfi, she also provided Silva with the email exchange between herself and Lutfi, detailing their surreptitious drug-based business relationship. This confirmed to Silva that Lutfi, Love's business manager and confidant, was in fact conspiring with and furnishing drugs to Cobain behind Silva's back. In one particular email exchange between Lutfi and Cobain on October 12, 2013, at approximately 5 p.m., Lutfi discussed the delivery of cookies to Cobain. In the email, Lutfi proposed that Cobain introduce Butler to Silva, stating, quote, "I'm telling ya, you should have Ross bring over the GTA 5, say your mom's sending it as a gift, and Ross can meet you two, and never mention me or cookies. Plus, I bet you Isiah will think he's cool. Ross is playing guitar for the Rolling Stones in San Fran this December, by the way. Plus, if they click, then great. You'll have a friend of his that's incredibly loyal to you." Cobain responded, "Amazing," and said, "My in-laws are still here, so maybe he should put them on the left side in the bushes like he did the first time. Just let me know when he's on his way so I can distract." Upon confirmation of Lutfi's clandestine drug supply arrangement with Cobain, Silva became extremely worried for Cobain and himself. Silva's underlying suspicion of Lutfi was further validated by black box security professionals hired following a break-in at the couple's home in October 2012. The employees of black box security recommended that Silva and Cobain not give any personal information to Lutfi, stating that Lutfi is notorious for using such information to go after people. This understanding, coupled with Silva's knowledge of the content of the email exchanges between Cobain and Lutfi, caused Silva to personalize the home's, quote, "smile, you're on camera" surveillance sign with the message, quote, "That means you, Sam Lutfi, and Ross Butler," end quote. A celebrity gossip website picked up on his handwritten note on the security sign and published an article which got back to Courtney Love and Lutfi, angering them. Foreshadowing what was to come for Silva years later, Love and Lutfi flooded Cobain and Silva with calls and texts demanding that Silva take the sign down immediately and issue a public apology to Lutfi and Butler. Silva did not apologize, but appeased Love and Lutfi by eventually taking the sign down. Lutfi's intrusion into Silva and Cobain's life and relationship was not limited to supplying drugs to Cobain. Lutfi found ways to insinuate himself into nearly anything that involved Cobain and her mother. Courtney Love referred to Lutfi as her, quote, "Rottweiler," and described him in a text message to Silva, quote, "He's a Rottweiler when it comes to protecting me and my assets, and a good friend," end quote. In February 2015, Love, Lutfi, Cobain, and Silva were scheduled to attend a premiere of the Kurt Cobain documentary Montage of Heck in Berlin. Prior to the premiere, Silva became ill and could not travel for the event. He encouraged Cobain to go without him, but she chose to stay with Silva. This angered Lutfi, and he lashed out at Silva, accusing him of lying about his illnesses and threatening him. Knowing that Lutfi lives on the end of Love's leash, Cobain informed her mother about Lutfi's conduct, and Love apologized to Silva by text message. In the message, Love once again confirmed Lutfi's status as her Rottweiler and her position as his handler. Quote, FBC just told me about Sam. I had no idea I have a Rottweiler who's out of control. Just fucking ignore him. I'm so sorry. Terribly so. I told him to knock it the fuck off. If he continues, please tell me. Ignore him. I should not have shared my concern with him. I'm sorry you are being growled at and threatened. He's probably drunk. Just ignore it. As part of Love and Lutfi's joint effort to cajole their way into Cobain and Silva's lives, Love, with the full knowledge of Lutfi's sordid public reputation, nonetheless told Silva to trust Lutfi. She asserted that Lutfi would be useful and worth having on their side. The extent of Lutfi's utility to Love was later illustrated by a 2013 email exchange between Lutfi and Cobain. Having lost control of Kurt Cobain's estate to her daughter in 2010, Love was replaced as the estate's manager by attorney David Byrnes. In addition, Love's decision authority for the estate, End of Music LLC, was transferred to Cobain. In the October 11, 2013 email exchange with Cobain, Lutfi endeavors to enlist Cobain's influence with EOM to expedite a large royalty payment Lutfi claims is due to Love. In an emotional play to obtain Cobain's support and financial aid, Lutfi told Cobain that Love was in debt by at least $130,000 and would not be able to pay her $16,000 rent, among other obligations. In a cynical effort to play Cobain against EOM, Lutfi implied that EOM blamed Cobain for their decision to not make the payment to Love earlier. Lutfi wrote, quote, "They basically rubbed it in our face already that you didn't care that the check is coming in December rather than next week." In an email back to Lutfi, Cobain initially says that she will intercede on Love's behalf if she can get the drugs delivered. Quote, "Tell you what, I'll do that if I can get a package delivered tonight or tomorrow. Fair trade-off?" Close quote. Lutfi responded by telling Cobain that Love has been living, quote, "frugally," and reiterates the gravity of Love's financial position. Lutfi ends his email with a reference to the drugs Cobain requested and an implied quid pro quo as to future drug deliveries. Quote, "I know you're thinking, fuck this guy, and where's Ross? LOL. Don't worry, that's being taken care of. But I'll be dry after that, so trying desperately to work on refilling the cookie jar." In the end, Love's Rottweiler filled the cookie jar and successfully exploited the addiction he encouraged and fueled with Cobain to manipulate her into interceding with EOM on Love's behalf. Cobain later claimed that she also gave Love money to pay her rent. Deeply hurt by Cobain's deception surrounding her secret drug-related business relationship with Lutfi, and following a drug-fueled episode of domestic violence wherein Cobain struck Silva, Silva called off the couple's engagement and October 30th, 2013 wedding date. Soon after, Cobain decided it was in her best interest and the best interest of her relationship with Silva to discontinue her illicit relationship with Lutfi. Towards this end, Cobain provided Silva with copies of her email communications with Lutfi regarding their illicit drug-related business relationship. The relationship between Silva and Cobain improved, and the couple re-established their trust. Silva and Cobain began looking to their future and possible marriage. Ultimately, Cobain and Lutfi rekindled their drug-related business relationship behind Silva's back. Unaware of this development, Silva surprised Cobain with a marriage proposal and ring to celebrate their re-engagement. The couple set a new wedding date for June 2014, in anticipation of the couple's annual January 8th celebration of their dating anniversary, which would have special significance due to the re-engagement and new wedding date. Silva spent the month of December in 2013 meticulously constructing a highly personalized art studio reading room for Cobain at their Carson Avenue residence. Eager to surprise his fiancée, Silva began the process of converting the spare bedroom. No detail was spared in Silva's quest to surprise Cobain with an extravagant and sentimental dating anniversary gift. He purchased much of the room furnishings and decor from Cobain's favorite high-end antique shop, TINL. He furnished the room with other unique, vintage, and rare items that he had gotten from all over the world, basically. I'm not going to go and read through all of the pieces of furniture. I don't think it's relevant at this point. Okay, moving on. Cobain, aware that Silva had been laboring for weeks in preparation for their annual dating anniversary celebration, and in light of the couple's re-engagement and new wedding date, obtained consent and acknowledgement from Love to retrieve one of her late father's guitar from storage. Cobain selected the 1959 Martin guitar she observed Silva playing during a prior visit to the storage facility. Notably, items could not be removed from the storage facility by Cobain or Love without their mutual consent, which proved to be difficult to achieve at times, one often holding out on the other for a favor in exchange for consent. On January 8, 2014, before the couple left to celebrate their anniversary, they exchanged gifts. First, Silva revealed the art studio / reading room to Cobain and all of its sentimental contents. Elated by Silva's gift, Cobain said that it was the most amazing thing anyone had ever done for her. Cobain, in celebration of the couple's dating anniversary, gifted Kurt Cobain's 1959 Martin guitar to Silva. Cobain also told Silva the guitar was meant for Silva to form a bond with his late father-in-law and welcome Silva into the family. The guitar immediately became symbolic and sentimental to Silva, and he kept it in the master bedroom of the couple's home. Silva and Cobain were married as planned on June 29, 2014, and continued to live together at the Carson Avenue house. Silva has an informal shared custody arrangement with his daughter Arlo's mother, Jessica Sullivan. During Silva and Cobain's dating relationship, Sullivan resided in Orange County near Silva's family residence, the school Silva worked at, and Silva's music studio. Cobain would accompany Silva during the routine custodial exchanges of Arlo, which required the couple to commute weekly from their residence in West Hollywood to Silva's family residence in Orange County to pick up Arlo. Due to the length of the commute, Cobain and Silva would sometimes stay overnight at Silva's family residence in Orange County. Silva would also organize a practice with his band and spend time working in his music studio to maximize the couple's weekly commute to Orange County. After a period of time, the weekly routine did not sit well with Cobain, who confided in Silva's mother, Mary Silva, that she was wary of the weekly custodial exchanges. She told Mary it made her feel like Silva wasn't fully committed to the life and home the couple had built together in West Hollywood. Cobain asked Mary to stand with her as she tried to motivate Silva to relocate his Orange County-based obligations closer to the couple's Carson Avenue home. This resulted in Cobain and Silva purchasing a house on Willoughby Avenue in West Hollywood for Arlo and Sullivan, and enrolling Arlo at the Willows, Cobain's former private school. The Willoughby Avenue house was placed in a trust with Silva's father, Walter Silva. As the trustee, Arlo had been an integral part of Cobain's life since the age of 2 and was treated and referred to by Cobain as her daughter. Now married, Silva and Cobain lived together at their Curson Avenue home for the next 18 months. During that time, Cobain's drug use intensified, and by the fall of 2014, Cobain was again in the grasp of a life-threatening addiction. In November 2014, Cobain, Silva, and Arlo were watching television as a family on the bed when Cobain experienced a grand mal seizure. Cobain fell out of the bed and onto the floor. Silva, with formal CPR training and 8 years of experience working with epileptics, dropped to his knees and began to assist Cobain. Utterly terrified, Arlo watched Cobain violently thrashing on the floor and, in a display of courage, dialed 911 from Silva's phone, then brought the phone to Silva. Silva remained on the phone with the 911 operator for 8 minutes while anxiously waiting for the paramedics to arrive. Silva held his seizing fiancée with his left hand and his distraught daughter with his right hand. Just moments before the paramedics arrived, Cobain stopped convulsing, seemingly stopped breathing, and began to turn blue. Fearing the worst, Silva frantically repositioned Cobain onto her back for CPR compressions. When Cobain sat up, astonished, wide-eyed, and gasping for air. Moments later, the paramedics arrived at the family's Curson Avenue residence and, after a thorough assessment, concluded that Cobain was going to be fine. Within hours of being revived by Silva, Cobain sent text messages to her loved ones that read, quote, "So, I almost died tonight. I had a grand mal seizure. Isiah thought I had died in his arms. Pretty insane. I shouldn't be alive, but I am, which is a good thing, so I'm texting everyone I love and telling them I love you." End quote. At this point, fearing for Frances Cobain's well-being, Silva spoke to Wendy O'Connor, Frances's grandmother, who Cobain regarded more of a mother figure than she did Courtney Love. Silva told O'Connor about Cobain's drug use, her grand mal seizure, and the nature of Love and Lutfi's involvement in Frances Cobain's life. By February of 2016, Cobain's increasingly heavy drug use put a tremendous strain on her marriage to Silva, but Silva stood by Cobain and made numerous attempts to monitor her and intervene when possible. On February 12, 2016, Cobain disappeared from the Curson Avenue house without explanation. Silva became immensely concerned and immediately tried reaching out to Cobain without success. Sometime later, Silva discovered a note written by Cobain, which said in part, quote, "Isiah, I love you. Please don't think of this as abandoning you or as cruel or crude. That is not my intention in the slightest." Close quote. The note went on to suggest that Cobain had left to, quote, "evaluate her priorities," end quote. Silva interpreted Cobain's note to mean that she was seeking help with her drug addiction, which Cobain appeared to describe in the note. Quote, "I feel like I've been stuck in the same cycle of misery and chaos, an almost physical pain of wondering when, where, how, and the gnawing need that eats away at the pit of my stomach forces me to focus most of my energy on that and know in my heart of hearts within my truth that it's not healthy. It's essentially a death wish for me." Close quote. Cobain's note left Silva with the impression that she intended to return to their marriage after she got well. Silva knew that Cobain was extremely close with her personal assistant, John Hamilton, and was aware of how much she relied upon him for her day-to-day needs. When Hamilton arrived at the couple's Curson Avenue residence for work on the following Monday, Silva asked him if he had been in communication with Cobain or had any knowledge of her whereabouts. Hamilton, complying with Cobain's instruction, feigned ignorance. After days of Silva's persistence, Hamilton finally relented and informed Silva that he had personal knowledge that Cobain was safe. However, Hamilton would not provide Silva with any additional information regarding Cobain. Unbeknownst to Silva, Hamilton had been with Cobain on a nearly daily basis since she disappeared from the Kirsten Avenue residence, continuing on as her personal assistant. While aware of Cobain's intention to divorce Silva, Hamilton never disclosed this fact to Silva, nor did he disclose to Silva that Cobain had no intention of returning to the couple's home. From the day that Cobain disappeared, February 12, 2016, and continuing on an almost daily basis, Hamilton came to the Kirsten Avenue residence to retrieve specific items that Cobain requested. During this period, Hamilton had unfettered access to the Kirsten Avenue property and was often there unsupervised by Silva. Not once during this period did Cobain personally or through Hamilton attempt to pick up the 1959 Martin guitar, nor did Cobain or Hamilton ask Silva to give back the 1959 Martin guitar Cobain had given him. Following Cobain's February 12, 2016 departure, Silva remained at the Kirsten Avenue home. Despite the fact that Cobain filed for divorce on March 14, 2016, the couple hung out casually on a handful of occasions in March and April of 2016. Between March and mid-May 2016, Cobain and Silva began peacefully discussing an amicable resolution regarding Cobain's desire for a divorce. Each expressed to the other they preferred not to involve attorneys. During these discussions, including an April 26 hour-long discussion at the couple's Kirsten Avenue residence, Cobain walked through the residence, thoroughly combing through her belongings and ultimately removing various items. Cobain removed so many items that she needed Silva's help carrying them to his car and placing them in the trunk. Thereafter, Silva and Cobain drove to Cobain's new residence and unloaded the items, placing them in the entryway of her new home. While picking up and removing items from the Kirsten Avenue residence, Cobain never attempted to repossess the 1959 Martin guitar, nor did she ask Silva to give it back to her. Following Cobain's April 26 walkthrough of the Kirsten Avenue house, she and Silva spent the night together in a suite at the Sunset Marquis Hotel. Sometime in the next morning, Cobain, while sitting with Silva, called her dissolution attorney and, in a speakerphone conversation, personally instructed her attorney to indefinitely hold off on serving Silva with divorce papers because they were in the process of reaching an amicable resolution without attorneys. Yet for reasons unknown to Silva, the attorney had a process server attempt to serve him on May 30th, 2016. The process server mistakenly delivered the papers to Silva's guest, Robin Diaz. After Cobain left Silva, the decision to gift him the valuable 1959 Martin guitar became a point of contention with Love and her Rottweiler, Lutfi, who came to regard it as a terrible mistake. Both Lutfi and Love were enraged by Cobain's gifting of the 1959 Martin guitar to Silva and became obsessed with finding a way to retrieve the guitar. Lutfi and Love were determined to clean up what they perceived as Cobain's mess and take back the 1959 Martin guitar from Silva. Weeks after the June 3, 2016 incident in the presence of Philip M. Munsey II, Lutfi and Love discussed the guitar's monetary value, which they believed to be in the millions. They talked about Love's financial woes, and they talked about how foolish they believed it was for Cobain to have given Silva the guitar. Absent court order to the contrary, California law provides that a party pending litigation in a dissolution proceeding may remain in the marital home. After Cobain inexplicably disappeared from the Kirsten Avenue residence on February 12th, Silva remained at the residence by himself, with the exception of his young daughter Arlo, who stayed with Silva several days each week. Contrary to the law, Love conspired with Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman to kidnap Silva and unlawfully remove him from the Kirsten Avenue residence by force on June 3, 2016. Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman also conspired to illegally take possession of the 1959 Martin guitar Cobain had given to Silva as a gift. Despite the passage of nearly 4 months between her February 12th departure and the June 3rd attack, Cobain did not communicate or express her desire and/or intent to repossess the 1959 Martin guitar in any petition, dissolution action, informal settlement conference, text message, or email communication. It was not until after Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman failed to unlawfully and forcefully take possession of the 1959 Martin guitar on June 3, 2016, that it first arose as a point of contention in the dissolution case. Another act in furtherance of the conspiracy to murder Silva and thereby gain possession of the 1959 Martin guitar and end any claims Silva had to the Kirsten Avenue house, the will by trust and the spousal support occurred when Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman hacked Silva's iMessages account and sent out messages making it appear that Silva was despondent and on a mental precipice contemplating suicide. This was part of the plan to thereafter commit a home invasion, kidnap Silva, murder him, and make it appear to be a suicide, and finally recover the 1959 Martin guitar. Such a suicide narrative was not without precedent, nor was it newly employed against Silva. Foundation for what would become a central component of the conspirators' plan had been laid as early as 9 months prior to June 3, 2016. In a September 2015 text conversation with Lindsay, Cobain wrote, quote, "Isiah doesn't count. He's just a black cloud, but he sure as hell knows how to scare the shit out of me. He's selling everything he owns and asked John 3 times now where and how to get a gun. If he kills himself, I'm bringing him back from the dead so I can kill him, though I wouldn't have to get a postnuptial or deal with lawyers." Kidding. I'm just kidding. Close quote. Silva was not, in fact, suicidal, and Cobain's messages were contrived aimed at making Silva appear unhinged. In expressing concern over Silva inquiring about a firearm, Cobain cynically wrote a deception around the 3-year-old event that she stripped of context, mischaracterized, and portrayed as contemporaneous. The conspirators ultimately built upon this foundation to make Silva's, quote, suicide seem plausible. In truth, Silva's inquiries about firearms occurred 3 years earlier and had nothing whatsoever to do with suicide. In reality, it was just the opposite. On October 13, 2012, a mentally unstable Nirvana fan, known as Mark James Franco, broke into Cobain and Silva's Kirsten Avenue house. Rudd, who's the quote-unquote Mark James Franco, laid in wait at the couple's house with the intent of killing Silva. The LAPD responded and arrested Rudd. It was later discovered that Rudd was in possession of a coded death threat against Silva. In an effort to strengthen their personal security, Cobain and Silva updated the house's alarm system, bought a dog, and explored the idea of obtaining a defensive weapon. Cobain and Silva talked about and considered both lethal and non-lethal weapons before ultimately concluding that a non-lethal option was best suited for their needs. However, prior to settling on a non-lethal alternative, Silva and Cobain briefly considered obtaining a firearm. Cobain's new assistant, Hamilton, mentioned the fact that his brother was a police officer and was looking to sell a few of his guns. On a handful of occasions, Silva and Hamilton discussed the idea of Silva and Cobain purchasing one of Hamilton brothers' firearms. After dismissing the idea of a lethal weapon, the notion of obtaining a firearm was dropped and Silva never revisited the issue again. In late May 2016, Silva received several frantic text messages from his friend Simon Bennett, imploring Silva not to commit suicide. Unknown to Silva at the time, Bennett had received iMessages, seemingly from Silva, indicating that he was contemplating suicide. In text messages allegedly sent by Silva to Bennett, he said, quote, "I'm feeling suicidal, can't take this much longer. I feel awful for the things I've done," close quote. Bennett replied to Silva and stated, quote, "I'll call you in a minute, don't do anything. Hello, Isiah, pick up," close quote. This was a shock to Silva because he had not sent any iMessages to Bennett from his iPhone or from any other device at the time that Bennett had received the suicidal iMessages. Even more confounding, Silva was asleep at the time that the suicidal messages were sent to Bennett. Furthermore, and most importantly, Silva was not suicidal. Bennett was able to make contact with Silva and directly confirmed with him that he had not drafted the suicidal iMessages that Bennett received, thus confirming Silva's iMessage had been hacked. Immediately upon confirming Silva's iMessage had been hacked, Bennett assisted Silva in taking security measures to help ensure Silva's iPhone and other devices were sufficiently protected. Following the hacked iMessage incident in late May 2016, Silva became genuinely concerned for his own safety. Based upon his prior conversations with Wendy O'Connor, who is Kurt Cobain's mother, and what he subsequently came to know about the circumstances surrounding Kurt Cobain's death, Silva recognized the possible significance of the counterfeit suicide messages. Acting upon his concern, Silva called the non-emergency line for the LAPD, where he was connected with Dispatch Officer Watson. Upon confirming with Dispatch Officer Watson that non-emergency calls were recorded, Silva explained that somebody had attempted to make him appear despondent and suicidal, and he informed Dispatch Officer Watson that if anything happened to him, to look into Lutfi and Love. This conduct follows a disturbingly similar pattern and course of conduct to the modus operandi of Lutfi in the harassment cases of Samuel Barth versus Osama Lutfi, Deborah Barth versus Osama Lutfi, Daniel Haynes versus Osama Lutfi, and Daniel Haynes versus Osama Lutfi. Beginning on or about May 31st, 2016, and continuing for several days, Lutfi and Love directed a barrage of menacing text messages, telephone calls, and tweets to Silva's friend and bandmate, Diaz. Diaz, a studio and touring musician with a 20-year career in the music industry, had been previously hired by Love to play drums and tour in Love's band. Diaz had also been hired to play drums for Love's friend, former writing partner and ex-boyfriend, Billy Corgan, of the Smashing Pumpkins. Turning Diaz against Silva was critical to the defendants' plan because Love and Lutfi knew that Diaz had been recording with Silva and was very recently at the Kirsten Avenue house with Silva. Love and Lutfi believed that Diaz could provide them with the alarm and gate codes as well as information about when Silva was alone at the Kirsten Avenue house. In addition, Diaz was one of the few people not already aligned with Love and Lutfi who had socialized with Silva in person over the days immediately preceding June 3, 2016. As a result, Diaz had contemporaneous first-hand knowledge of Silva's true state of mind, which conflicted with the suicide narrative that Courtney Love and Sam Lutfi had gone to great lengths to cultivate. Lutfi relentlessly threatened and harassed Diaz, stating, quote, "Robin, be smart. You've got your own family to protect and future and career, and he, meaning Silva, isn't going to provide that for you. Robin, listen to me. You're playing games and I will target you. I'm pulling you into this. You have no clue what hell you're facing. Sacrifice your entire future for Isiah. Smart choice, buddy. Very smart, that's right. Hang up like a pussy. Make the right choice or live in hell. You decide. You're making the worst choice of your life right now. Both Courtney and Billy are contacting everyone in this house. Going to dedicate this entire day to making sure we've spoken to everyone. Is that what you want? Do not relay anything to anyone. Give me the cell number Isiah is currently using. I'm not asking again. End quote. Love likewise threatened Diaz, stating, quote, I'm going to spend every dime I have and all the energy in the world to put you behind bars along with your best friends. Calls are being made. You will never work again in this town. I promise you this. You're about to set forth on a journey of serious pain. You chose the wrong side. You just walked straight into hell, and you'll pay eternally. In a telephone conversation during the last week of May 2016, Lutfi attempted to manipulate Diaz by claiming that Silva was under investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation and that Diaz, as a consequence of his friendship with Silva, was likewise under the FBI investigation. Lutfi then offered to broker a meeting between Diaz and the FBI in exchange for Diaz pledging his allegiance to Cobain in regard to the Cobain versus Silva divorce case. Thereafter, on June 3, 2016, during the home invasion and kidnapping at the Carson Avenue residence, Lutfi, Butler, and Yachtman aggressively insisted to Silva that he was under investigation by the FBI and that Diaz had already cooperated with the FBI as a display of his loyalty and support to Cobain. Diaz, distressed by the barrage of threats Lutfi and Love directed at him, his wife Lisa, and his career, reluctantly called Lutfi, and on the evening of June 2, 2016, Diaz and Lisa drove to Lutfi's Caswell Avenue residence in Mar Vista, hoping to reason with Lutfi and Love and resolve whatever it was that incited their hostility. Diaz and Lisa met with Lutfi at his Caswell Avenue residence. Lutfi asked Diaz to give him the security code for the alarm system at the Carson Avenue residence where Silva lived. Diaz informed Lutfi that he was unaware of the security code. Lutfi then attempted to secure Diaz's cooperation in conspiring against Silva by offering him a monetary bribe. When Diaz did not respond favorably to the bribe, Lutfi asked, quote, "Don't you need money?" End quote, and then attempted to bribe Diaz with professional favors from Cobain and Love that would advance Diaz's music career by way of their connection in the music industry. This was the same tactic that Lutfi would use after June 3, 2016, in order to temporarily manipulate and silence Muncie. After the June 3, 2016 home invasion and kidnapping at the Carson Avenue residence, Diaz called the Silva family home and spoke to Silva's sister, Summer Silva. Diaz told Summer that they had threatened to kill Lisa, and that was the reason he had given up Silva, a claim that Diaz has since repeated. Due to Lutfi and Love's threats, Diaz had become extremely concerned about his career. On or about June 2, 2016, with the objective of stealing the 1959 Martin guitar from Silva, forcing him from the Carson Avenue home, and ending Silva's potential legal claims, defendants Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yachtman set in motion their final act of their conspiracy to burglarize, kidnap, rob, and murder Silva. Just after midnight on June 3, 2016, Yachtman drove Lutfi and Butler to the Carson Avenue house in a black Cadillac Escalade. Dressed in dark clothing, Lutfi, Yutman, and Butler entered onto the property. The property surrounding the Curson Avenue residence, including the backyard, was protected by several tall gates, each of which required an access code to enter. It is unknown how Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman were able to gain access through the locked gates, but after getting past the gates, they approached a set of glass-paned double doors located on the first floor to the rear of the property. Lutfi, Yutman, and Butler used a rock to break the glass adjacent to the locking mechanism in one of the doors and made entry into the residence. Yutman, Butler, and Lutfi rushed up the interior stairway to the second floor where Lutfi approached the master bedroom. At this time, Silva and his bandmate, Munzi, were watching a movie in the upstairs master bedroom at the Curson Avenue residence when they heard noises coming from the first floor. Silva initially thought the noise was made by his cats and paused the movie so he and Munzi could listen more intently. The noises were closely followed by a crashing sound, and the home alarm system activated and began blaring throughout the residence. Silva and Munzi were distressed by the sound of footsteps racing up the stairway. Lutfi pounded loudly on the locked master bedroom while he, Butler, and Yutman yelled that they were police officers with the Los Angeles Police Department. They repeatedly yelled, "Police, open up! LAPD, open up the fucking door!" Impersonating police officers, Lutfi, Yutman, and Butler ordered Silva to open the locked door. Silva and Munzi watched in astonishment as someone began violently shaking the door handle and incessantly pounding on the locked master bedroom door. Confused and in shock, Silva and Munzi hesitated and did not immediately open the locked master bedroom door. The delay seemed to enrage the, quote, police officers, and they screamed at Silva that he had just seconds to open the door and that the longer he waited, the worse it would be for him. In compliance with what he thought to be an order from law enforcement officers, Silva began to slowly open the locked bedroom door. As he did so, the door was flung open, revealing 3 imposter policemen, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman. Before Silva could react, Lutfi seized him and violently dragged him from the bedroom. With obvious surprise, Lutfi saw that Silva was not alone. It was apparent from his reaction that Lutfi expected Silva to be alone at the Curson Avenue residence. Lutfi screamed at Munzi, ordering him to leave the house. The home's detailed alarm activity report for the early morning hours of June 3rd confirms the home invasion began at approximately 12:20 a.m. The alarm report further indicates that the point of entry was the rear door. The fact that Lutfi later claimed to the LAPD investigating officers that he had been given the key to the front door of the Curson Avenue house by Cobain prior to the home invasion suggests that breaking and entering through the rear glass door was a ruse intended as a forensic countermeasure to make it appear as though the kidnapping was committed by random individuals unfamiliar to Silva or Cobain. Cobain had consistently maintained that she never gave Lutfi a key to the Curson Avenue residence. As Lutfi forced a stunned Silva onto the stairwell, he continued screaming at Munzi and threatened him with bodily harm if he did not leave the house. Munzi complied with Lutfi's orders, and Yutman and Butler returned to the first floor in order to escort Munzi to the front door. Once at the door, Yutman and Butler pushed Munzi out and closed the door behind him. As Munzi was exiting, he looked back and saw Lutfi violently assaulting Silva on the landing of the stairs near the bathroom. As Silva struggled with Lutfi, he repeatedly screamed for Munzi to call the police. Once the front door to the residence was closed, Lutfi, who was engaged in a one-on-one physical altercation with Silva, on the stairway landing, summoned Butler and Yuckman to help him subdue Silva. Yuckman and Butler rushed to the stairway landing near the bathroom, where they joined Lutfi in assaulting Silva. Ultimately, the three intruders were able to overpower Silva. As Butler held one arm and Yuckman the other arm, they pinned Silva against the wall. While Silva continued his efforts to free himself from Butler and Yuckman's grip, Lutfi told Butler to take the telephone from Silva's hand. Quote, grab his phone, end quote. Butler seized the iPhone as well as Silva's wallet and identification card, all of which Silva had been clutching in his left hand. As Butler took Silva's wallet and iPhone, Lutfi crudely searched Silva by patting his pants down. Lutfi then removed his face to within inches of Silva's face, grabbed Silva's genital through his pants, and whispered to Silva, quote, listen, faggot, calm the fuck down or we'll drag you upstairs and take turns fucking you, end quote. In fear for his life, Silva tried to appear calm and cooperative. However, Lutfi, Butler, and Yuckman continued to threaten him and physically removed Silva from his home against his will. The three intruders placed their hands under Silva's arms and dragged him out of his home. Once Silva was outside, Lutfi, Butler, and Yuckman physically forced Silva into the back seat of a strategically parked black Cadillac Escalade waiting directly outside of the Curson Avenue residence front gate. As Muncie was being forced from the Curson Avenue residence by Butler and Yuckman, he heard Silva's desperate pleas for him and called 911. Muncie reported the home invasion and kidnapping in process to a 911 operator at 12:24 a.m. While on the phone with 911, Muncie watched as Lutfi, Butler, and Yuckman kidnapped Silva, physically forcing him into the black Cadillac Escalade. Muncie managed to get his own vehicle and drove a short distance down Curson Avenue ahead of the Cadillac while still speaking to the 911 operator. He used his car to block the narrow canyon road in an attempt to prevent the Cadillac Escalade from reaching Hollywood Boulevard and escaping with Silva. Muncie's 911 emergency call was recorded and subsequently has been authenticated. The Curson Avenue residence is located near the top of a dimly lit, narrow, dead-end canyon road with only one way in and one way out. As the black Cadillac Escalade, with Yuckman behind the wheel and Silva restrained by Lutfi in the back seat, made its escape down Curson Avenue, it encountered Muncie's vehicle parked across the road, blocking their escape. The black Cadillac Escalade came to a stop, and the three kidnappers shouted from the Escalade and initiated a conversation with Muncie as he spoke to the 911 operator. From inside the Escalade, Lutfi spoke with Muncie and learned that the LAPD was responding to their location. Within minutes, an LAPD helicopter was overhead and police cars rushed into the area. At this point, Muncie moved his car, which cleared the way for the black Cadillac Escalade to proceed towards the police cars. Approximately 90 minutes after leaving the scene, Muncie texted Silva's parents and alerted them of the home invasion and kidnapping of their son. The scene on Curson Avenue was chaotic as the black Cadillac Escalade reached the lower section of Curson Avenue near Waddles Park. Bright lights lit up the cabin of the black Escalade. Police car barricaded the narrow canyon road, sealing off the exit, and a police helicopter circled loudly overhead. An LAPD officer spoke over a loudspeaker and ordered Yuckman to stop the vehicle. Thereafter, the occupants of the parked black Cadillac Escalade were ordered to roll all of the vehicle's windows down and place their hands outside the windows, and the three kidnappers and their victim were ordered to exit the vehicle one by one and walk down Curson Avenue towards the police officers stationed near Waddles Park. While Lutfi, Butler, Yuckman, and Silva still occupied the black Cadillac Escalade, Lutfi hurriedly concocted a false story intended to prevent LAPD from arresting them. In order to ensure that Silva went along with the false narrative, Lutfi threatened the lives of Silva's family and 7-year-old daughter, Arlo. Lutfi threatened Silva, stating that Silva and his family would suffer dire consequences and he would be sacrificing his life and his family members' lives if he failed to convincingly relay the fake story to the police officers at the scene, and if he ever revealed the truth about the home invasion, assault, and kidnapping. In the future, he would follow up on those threats. Lutfi menaced Silva, telling him to think long and hard about his family, specifically his young daughter, Arlo. Lutfi went on to tell Silva that he had surreptitiously gathered information about Arlo and knew where Arlo lived, where she went to school, her teacher's name, her school schedule, and which days Arlo spent with Silva during the week. Lutfi also warned Silva that he, Love, and Cobain owned the judicial system, the LAPD, and the media, so no one would believe Silva. Lutfi's threats regarding Arlo achieved their intended result and overrode Silva's sense of self-preservation. In shock and fearing for his life and the lives of his family and daughter, Silva agreed to go along with Lutfi's false narrative and told responding officers what Lutfi told him to say. Silva told the officers that Lutfi, Yutman, and Butler were old college friends of his from out of town, and the kidnapping had been a prank intended to surprise Silva. The prank was misconstrued by Munzi, who was not familiar with Lutfi, Yutman, and Butler, which led him to place the 911 emergency phone call. Were it not for the intervention of Munzi and the LAPD, it is believed, based upon facts and evidence, that Silva would have been taken to a secondary crime scene and murdered on June 3, 2016. As previously described in this complaint, Lutfi, Love, and their co-conspirators went to great lengths to create the impression that Cobain's soon-to-be ex-husband was depressed, drug-addicted, and on the brink of committing suicide, and had recently inquired about where to obtain a firearm. An eerily familiar scenario taken in the light of persistent suspicions of Love's involvement in the alleged suicide of her own soon-to-be ex-husband, Kurt Cobain, who had also been characterized by Love as depressed, drug-addicted, suicidal, and recently in possession of a firearm. Having spoken candidly with Kurt Cobain's mother, Wendy O'Connor, on several prior occasions, Silva was keenly aware of the disturbing correlations between his circumstances and those of O'Connor's late son. Over the course of several conversations between Wendy O'Connor, Silva, and Silva's family members in 2015, O'Connor provided a detailed account of what led her to this conclusion, which included information about how Love behaved leading up to and after Kurt Cobain's death. During one of their 2015 conversations, O'Connor told Silva and Mary that shortly after Kurt Cobain's death, she and Courtney Love were talking in the kitchen of the Washington home where Kurt Cobain had died. When O'Connor began to question the facts surrounding her son's alleged suicide, O'Connor said that Love became angry and threatened O'Connor's daughter, Brianne O'Connor, saying, quote, "Shut up or she's next." O'Connor told Silva that Silva's mother, Mary, that Kurt Cobain had filed for divorce from Love shortly before his death and had initiated the process of cutting Love out of his last will and testament. On the same day that she threatened O'Connor, Courtney Love threw Kurt Cobain's divorce papers into the fire and declared to O'Connor, quote, "Everything's mine." O'Connor also told Silva and Silva's family members that she was dissatisfied with the recent documentary Montage of Heck about her late son, and said that she felt manipulated by the film's director, Love, and Cobain for forcing her to participate in the film, which O'Connor claimed was vindication project for Love. Consequently, O'Connor asked to have her scenes taken out of the film prior to its release, but her request was denied by the film's director, Love, and Cobain. O'Connor told the Silvas that she favored a contemporaneously released documentary, Soaked in Bleach, which advanced the theory that Kurt Cobain's death was a murder, not a suicide, and that Love was a co-conspirator in his murder. O'Connor implored Silva and his family to watch Soaked in Bleach. The memory of this conversation with O'Connor regarding her belief that Love was directly involved in the staged suicide of her late son, Kurt Cobain, and the detailed account O'Connor gave thereof in conjunction with what had occurred at the Carson Avenue house on June 3rd, put Silva at even greater fear for his life and the lives of his family. The crimes committed against Silva by co-conspirators Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman caused Silva great anxiety and emotional distress. Prior to June 3, 2016, Silva also became aware of Lutfi's notorious reputation through employees of Black Box Security, who described Lutfi as a shady fixer orbiting around the fringe of celebrity culture, where it is alleged that Lutfi harassed multiple celebrities, most notably Britney Spears and the Spears family. Once the LAPD left the scene where Lutfi, Yutman, Butler, and Silva had been contacted on Carson Avenue, Silva, still acting under the threats made to him and against his family, got back into the black Cadillac Escalade as ordered by Lutfi. Yutman then drove them all back to the Carson Avenue residence, where the three men held Silva hostage for several hours. Concentrating on forcing Silva to disclose the location of the 1959 Martin guitar, Lutfi incessantly threatened and demanded Silva, declaring Silva deserved a bullet in the head and to be put in the ground. Lutfi also told Silva that he was going to make him the most hated person in Hollywood and that he, Love, and Cobain were working to destroy his decade-long career in music. Lutfi informed Silva that they had already started the process by contacting various DJs at KROQ and Alt 98.7 in Los Angeles that Silva had a working relationship with. Lutfi said that the DJs were told by Love and Cobain to boycott Silva's band. Taking aim again at Silva's daughter, Lutfi claimed that he was going to go straight from Silva's Carson Avenue residence that morning to Arlo's residence and make sure that Silva never saw her again, implying that he was going to kidnap and or kill his daughter. Lutfi told Silva that they, the conspirators, had bugged Silva's home and had been recording him at home for the past 9 months. Lutfi told Silva that he should just give it to them now because they had the means and influence to carry out the threats without being legally held responsible. Eventually, Lutfi ordered Butler and Yutman to exit the home and directed them to stand guard outside. Once alone with Silva inside the Carson Avenue house, Lutfi's behavior became erratic. 1 minute, Lutfi was offering Silva bribes in order to obtain the 1959 Martin guitar, and the next minute he would return to threatening violence against Silva and his family if he did not give him the guitar. As before, Lutfi predominantly focused his threats on Silva's younger daughter. In an effort to end his captivity and stop Lutfi's threats, Silva told Lutfi that he had been recording with his bands, the Eries, at the Village Recorder in Santa Monica from May 30th, 2016 to June 1st, 2016. Silva explained that because they had been in the recording sessions, many of his guitars were displaced from where they were generally stored. Silva told Lutfi that this included the 1959 Martin guitar that was given to him by Cobain years earlier. Over the next few hours, Lutfi came to realize that he would not be able to take possession of the guitar at that time. This angered him, and his behavior became even more threatening. Lutfi then rummaged through Silva's personal mail, opened several items, and ultimately stole Silva's mail from his residence. While holding Silva captive, Lutfi recognized that being identified by Muncie and contacted by the LAPD made arrest and prosecution near certainties should Silva be found dead. Love, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman abandoned their original plan to murder Silva and set about extorting him into signing a settlement agreement crafted to accomplish the original objectives of their conspiracy without necessitating Silva's murder. In order to accomplish this, Love's attorney, Mark Gaines, joined the conspiracy, and they conspired and acted in concert to falsely imprison Silva and extort him into signing the aforementioned settlement agreement. Towards this end, Lutfi continued to threaten Silva and told him that he was in communication with Cobain's attorneys and attorney Gaines. Lutfi walked between Silva and the adjacent room, speaking on his phone and texting obsessively. Several minutes later, Lutfi held out his phone and briefly showed Silva written communication that he claimed were from the attorneys. Lutfi told Silva that the attorneys provided him with a divorce settlement agreement, which required that Silva agree to 7 terms. Chief among them were that Silva agreed to surrender the ownership of the 1959 Martin guitar and any claims he may have to the Curzon Avenue Willow by trust and spousal support from Cobain. In addition, Lutfi said that the agreement required that Silva surrender to him all photographs and recordings of Cobain that Silva accumulated during their dating relationship and marriage. Lutfi asserted that the agreement was drafted by Cobain's lawyers and said he was under orders to have Silva sign the document, quote, ASAP, with Lutfi acting as a witness. Notwithstanding the fact that the value of the 1959 Martin guitar and Silva's other potential marital claims amounted to millions of dollars, Lutfi told Silva that he had convinced Love and Cobain to allow Silva $120,000. Lutfi told Silva that if he signed the agreement with the terms, he, Yutman, and Butler would leave him in peace and no harm would come to Silva's family. From that point forward, Lutfi's threats and intimidation shifted focus entirely from the 1959 Martin guitar to extorting Silva into agreeing to the aforementioned terms and coercing Silva into signing a settlement agreement replicating those terms. Lutfi relentlessly threatened and menaced Silva for hours, focusing his threats as before on Silva's family, specifically Arlo, as leverage to bend Silva to his will. After hours of unremitting threats and abuse, Lutfi told Silva that he was tired and needed to sleep. However, before leaving the Curzon Avenue house, Lutfi demanded that Silva give him his computer. Lutfi told Silva that he needed to smash the computer hard drive so that he could present it to Love and Cobain to show them that he had at least destroyed all of Silva's photographs and recordings of Cobain. Just before dawn on June 3, 2016, Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman finally left Silva's residence. As Lutfi left, he got in Silva's face and told him that he needed to cooperate and sign the settlement agreement or they would make good on their threats and come after Silva and his family even harder than they had that night, referring to the home invasion, assault, robbery, and kidnapping. Capitalizing on the atmosphere of threats, fear, and intimidation he had created, Lutfi ordered Silva to remain at his Curzon Avenue residence until the agreement was delivered to him and he signed it. Lutfi further directed Silva to respond immediately to any subsequent communication regarding the agreement. He told Silva that he would post one of his men outside the Curzon Avenue house to be sure Silva didn't leave. Terrified, Silva did as he was ordered and remained in prison at the Curzon Avenue house, fearing that if he were to leave or fail to sign the agreement, Lutfi would make good on the threats made against him, Arlo, and Silva's family. At approximately 8 a.m. on June 3, 2016, Silva's mother, Mary, read the text message that Munsley had sent her earlier that morning. The text informed Mary that Lutfi had broken into Silva's house with 2 other men. Mary and Silva's sister, Summer, frantically drove from Orange County to Los Angeles to pick up Silva and take him to safety. Upon arriving at Silva's Curzon Avenue residence in West Hollywood, Mary found her son in shock, hardly able to speak and immobilized by fear. Silva, heeding to the orders given to him by Lutfi and paralyzed by the fear that Lutfi would make good on his threats, refused to leave his Carson Avenue residence. At some length, Mary succeeded in convincing Silva to take refuge with his family in Orange County. Silva was so shaken and spent that he was unable to drive. Consequently, Mary drove Silva in his car to Orange County while Summer raced to pick up Arlo, who was at her Willoughby Avenue house, and take her to Orange County. Later that evening, Lutfi, in the belief that Silva was still imprisoned in his own house, awaiting the agreement, sent Silva a screenshot of a text exchange between himself and Gaines that occurred between 9:36 and 9:45 p.m. In the text message exchange, Lutfi asks Gaines if he can release Silva. Gaines responds telling Lutfi that he should wait until the agreement was completed and Silva signed it, quote, so everything can be finalized first, end quote. It is evident from the text messages that Gaines was not only aware that Silva was being held against his will at the Carson Avenue house, but that Gaines was directing Lutfi's actions and making the decisions as to whether Silva would remain a prisoner or be permitted to leave. As evidenced by the text exchange, Gaines intended for Silva to remain a prisoner until he conceded to their extortion demands and signed away, among other things, the 1959 Martin guitar and any rights that he might have to the properties. Over the course of the next 24 hours, Lutfi continuously badgered Silva with text messages, which pressed him to sign the agreement and reinforced his earlier threats against Silva's life. Quote, this agreement is your one and only choice. Consider it your lifeline, end quote. Later during this period, Lutfi shifted from direct threats of physical violence to threats of civil lawsuits, baseless felony criminal charges, and vague references to Silva and his family being the targets of a federal investigation over which Love and Cobain exercised control. Lutfi, Love, and Gaines would criminally prosecute Silva if he did not sign their MOU, settlement agreement. Lutfi described the settlement agreement as Silva's, quote, get out of jail card, end quote. Silva, still in a state of shock and anxious fear after the home invasion, assault, kidnapping, and threats against him and his family, believed Lutfi capable of carrying out his threats, to include filing false criminal charges against him. Silva felt the safest move for him was to foster Lutfi's mistaken belief that he was still a prisoner at the Carson Avenue house and adopt an exceedingly agreeable and cooperative tone with Lutfi. Working to tie up loose ends and aware that Mumsy had witnessed the home invasion, assault, and kidnapping of Silva, Lutfi bribed Mumsy to keep him quiet and secure his loyalty. On June 7th, 2016, just 4 days after Mumsy witnessed the home invasion, assault, and kidnapping of his friend and bandmate, Lutfi moved Mumsy into his Mar Vista apartment and began paying Mumsy $3,000 unreported income every month to act as a personal assistant for him, Love, and Cobain. During this period, Mumsy alternatively received his salary payments from Lutfi and Love, mostly via PayPal. Lutfi further incentivized Mumsy by arranging for him to receive approximately $20,000 in cosmetic dental care, including but not limited to dental implants and veneers. In addition, Lutfi and Love used their influence on at least 3 occasions in an effort to help Mumsy secure employment. Mumsy had never met Lutfi or Love prior to the June 3, 2016 home invasion, assault, and kidnapping of Silva. According to Mumsy's statement, as part of his personal assistant duties, Mumsy delivered narcotics and illicit benzodiazepines to Cobain and Love on a daily basis. Mumsy estimated that he delivered in excess of 1,000 Xanax bars per week, which he obtained by Lutfi. Xanax bars are 2 milligram alprazolam pills that are available by prescription only and are classified as a Schedule IV controlled substance. This supply model is consistent with the 2013 email exchanges between Lutfi and Cobain, wherein they discuss the delivery of, quote, cookies. It is after the relationship between Lutfi and Munzi soured that Munzi confirms he received money and other valuable considerations in exchange for his support of Lutfi and Love's conspiracy against Silva. Once Munzi revealed he no longer wished to be associated with Lutfi, Love, and Cobain, Lutfi contacted Munzi and his parents and claimed that Munzi was going to jail for credit card fraud and for abusing Lutfi's dogs. Lutfi also threatened to destroy the career of Munzi's father, also named Philip Munzi, who is a well-known pastor affiliated with Joel Osteen. In the wake of the conspiracy's failure on June 3rd and 4th, 2016, and in furtherance of its primary objectives, Lutfi and Love embarked on a relentless campaign of threats, intimidation, harassment, and defamation against Silva, his family, and friends. Members of Silva's family were surveilled, stalked, menaced, and directly threatened by Lutfi and his agents in both Los Angeles and Orange counties. In addition, Lutfi sought out witnesses to the criminal acts committed by the conspirators, as well as the handful of witnesses with first-hand knowledge that Cobain had given the 1959 Martin guitar to Silva as a gift. Lutfi and Love attempted to bribe these witnesses with money and professional favors in exchange for false statements in support of Cobain's claim that the 1959 Martin guitar was not given to Silva, and to support further falsified claims about Silva in the divorce case. Silva's family, friends, and those who rejected the bribes offered by Lutfi were harassed, menaced, and threatened with false criminal charges, damage to their careers or employment, and/or threatened with false criminal charges, damage to their careers or employment, and/or bodily harm. Lutfi and Love's threats were intended to isolate Silva, dissuade potential witnesses, and solicit false statements from witnesses with direct knowledge of either the conspiracy or the fact that Cobain had given the 1959 Martin guitar to Silva as a gift. In addition, Love, Lutfi, and their agents saturated social media and celebrity gossip media organizations with false and defamatory information crafted to cast Silva in the worst possible light and discredit any allegations of misconduct on their part. Lutfi and his co-conspirators placed Silva's family home in Orange County under surveillance. Strange vehicles occupied by persons wearing wigs and clown glasses began to appear in Silva's quiet neighborhood. The surveillance vehicles would change their license plates before entering the neighborhood and would sometimes be left unoccupied within sight of the Silva house. Prior to her separation from Silva, Cobain once told Mary that when her mother, Courtney Love, wanted to harass someone, she would send people dressed in crazy wigs and large clown glasses because if the party being harassed called the police, they would be discredited by the outlandish description of the harasser. Members of Silva's family were often followed when they left the house. In one such occurrence on the evening of June 11, 2016, Mary drove from her house to a car dealership nearby. As she drove, two late-model Ford sedans without license plates boxed her in from the front and behind. The sedans slowed and began to force Mary to stop. Mary was able to turn quickly into the dealership and the sedans raced away. Mary was so shaken by the encounter that she filed a report with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Lutfi terrorized Silva's sister, Summer, through text messages and telephone calls sent from Silva's phone, which had been stolen by Lutfi, Butler, and Yutman during the June 3, 2016 home invasion. In one particularly vicious exchange on June 17, 2016, Lutfi threatened Summer's family with criminal prosecution, disparaged Summer's whore mother, quote-unquote, and quote-unquote piece of shit father, and ominously called at 1:15 a.m. to tell Summer that he was outside of the Silva family home and was coming to get her. Summer immediately called 911, and the Orange County Sheriff's Department responded, secured the area, and took a report for criminal threats. Lutfi sent messages to Silva's friends in an effort to erode Silva's credibility regarding the June 3rd kidnapping. Lutfi and Love also sent menacing texts to Silva's family and Silva's friends telling them that they, Lutfi, Love, and Cobain, had the ability to bring falsified criminal charges against Silva, Silva's family, and his friends. On June 5th and on June 6th, Sullivan was barraged with phone calls and text messages from Lutfi and Love. During his June 5th, 2016 attempt to bribe witness Sullivan, Lutfi stated, quote, "Do you have any idea what type of people you're dealing against? Are you stupid? Be her friend right now. Sign with her. You want a future? She's got money to fucking take care of you and your wife and your child till the day you die." End quote. When Sullivan rejected the bribe, Lutfi switched tactics and attempted to extort Sullivan's cooperation. Lutfi became belligerent during his June 6, 2016 call to Sullivan and spewed vile hate speech, calling Sullivan a cunt, a dyke, a whore, and a skinhead. Lutfi bullied Sullivan with threats, asserting that Cobain gave him control over her assets and that he would utilize that control to put Sullivan in the street and, quote, "Your kid will be in an orphanage," close quote, and, quote, "Do you know who you're dealing with?" End quote. One event in particular illustrates the nature and severity of the intimidation and harassment Lutfi and Love subjected Silva and his family and friends to following the June 3rd incident. On June 6, 2016, one of Silva's closest friends, Bennett, texted Silva's mobile phone, which had been forcefully taken from Silva by Lutfi 3 days earlier. When Bennett did not get a response, he drove to the Curson Avenue house and unsuccessfully tried to contact Silva there. Bennett returned to his house. Sometime later that day, Bennett exited his house, headed for the Gelson Market, a short distance from his home. As he exited the house, he was grabbed by the arms and confronted by two large men who physically restrained Bennett and warned him to stay away from Silva and Cobain and to stay out of their dispute. The men ordered Bennett, quote, "Do not contact Isiah or Francis ever again, or you'll be sorry." End quote. The men threatened Bennett, telling him that if he did not heed their warning, they would contact his employers and have him fired. Bennett knew that Love and Cobain frequented Chateau Marmont and that Love had great influence over Bennett's management and his workplace. In addition, Courtney Love apparently also had a dating relationship with Bennett's employer. Not realizing that Lutfi had stolen Silva's phone and was impersonating Silva in the text messages, Bennett continued to text Silva's phone. Impersonating Silva, Lutfi attempted to deceive Bennett into sending him all his prior text message traffic with Silva. Lutfi, in the guise of Silva, also tried to discredit the notion that he had kidnapped Silva. Bennett asked, quote, "Did Lutfi try to remove you from the house?" And Lutfi responded, quote, "Don't listen to Phil," end quote. When it became evident to Lutfi that Bennett no longer believed he was speaking with Silva, Lutfi threatened Bennett in the same way the men had earlier at his house. Quote, "Simon, you need to back off, you hear me? I'm going to have a talk with Mr. Balaj, who is his employer, about this." Close quote. Weeks later, Bennett was in fact terminated from his job. In another example of harassment, Lutfi used Sullivan's phone number to create an advertisement in the free section on Craigslist and posted a picture of Arlo's puppy. Subsequently, Sullivan's phone blew up with random inquiries about a free puppy. In addition, Lutfi illegally rerouted Silva's mail delivery to his own Caswell Avenue apartment in Los Angeles, where he opened it and used the contents to advance his campaign of intimidation against Silva. On June 26, 2016, Silva changed his mailing address with the United States Post Service. When Silva did not receive a single piece of mail, he contacted the United States Postal Inspection Service. After investigating Silva's complaint, United States Postal Inspection Service case number such and such, the postal inspectors informed Silva that Cobain had submitted a change of address in Silva's name on July 3, 2016, superseding Silva's June 26, 2016 change of address request. The July 3, 2016 change of address, erroneously attributed to Cobain, forwarded all of Silva's mail to Lutfi's Caswell Avenue residence. Lutfi's fraudulent mail forwarding scheme was confirmed both by the United States Postal Inspection Service and eyewitness Munzie, who lived with Lutfi at his Caswell Avenue residence in Mar Vista at the time. Munzie later revealed that Lutfi bragged that he was the one who submitted the fraudulent change of address request for Silva's mail. Munzie also personally observed Lutfi receive Silva's mail and watched as Lutfi opened the mail clearly addressed to Silva. Munzie also stated that he frequently found Silva's mail open lying around Lutfi's apartment. While Lutfi's campaign of stalking, intimidation, and harassment continued, unabated for months, the period of June 3rd through June 17th, 2016, was particularly intense for the Silva family. During this period, Lutfi launched a furious and unremitting barrage of sinister threats, intimidation, and harassment against Silva's mother, Silva's father, Silva's sister, his friends, Sullivan, and Arlo. Lutfi was also relentless and menacing that Silva and his family members were unable to sleep for days on end. Sleep-deprived and deeply shaken, the Silva family hired a licensed armed security guard on June 10th, hoping this would give them some peace of mind and help them sleep for the first time since June 3rd, 2016. The barrage of threats and intimidation put Silva in a near-constant state of shock, leaving him hesitant to trust anyone, including the LAPD. During the hours that Lutfi held Silva captive on June 3, 2016, he repeatedly warned Silva against contacting the police or in any other way reporting the crimes that occurred at his residence. Lutfi put a great effort into convincing Silva that reporting Lutfi's crime would be of no avail because he, Love, and Cobain controlled the Los Angeles Police Department, the judicial system, and the media. Taken in combination with Lutfi's explicit threats against his daughter and his family, Silva was paralyzed into inaction for several days. However, after rallying support from his family and friends, Silva mustered the courage to travel from Orange County to the LAPD's Hollywood station, where he reported the June 3, 2016 home invasion, assault, robbery, kidnapping, and extortion at his residence. An investigative report was written on June 8, 2016. The incident number is 16060-800. During the perfunctory and truncated investigation that resulted from Silva's June 8, 2016 crime report, Lutfi admitted to the investigating police officers that he had entered Silva's residence without the permission or knowledge of Silva. Lutfi asserted that he had been able to enter Silva's residence on June 3rd with a key given to him by Cobain. Lutfi outrageously claimed to the investigating police officer that his purpose for entering Silva's home during the early morning hours of June 3, 2016, was to take Silva out to a restaurant and discuss his alleged drug abuse. Lutfi went on to tell the investigating police officers that it got late, that they were stopped by the responding officers at the scene, so they returned to Silva's residence instead of continuing on to the restaurant. On June 27, 2016, Silva obtained a temporary restraining order issued by the Los Angeles Superior Court. The court ordered Lutfi to stay at least 100 yards away from Silva and to cease any harassment, intimidation, abuse, stalking, attacking, threatening, assault, or disturbance of the peace of Silva and his family. The temporary restraining order was based on the unlawful violence and credible threat of violence or stalking as outlined herein. The nature of the acts committed, the relationships between the parties, the common interest of the co-conspirators, and the overt acts performed by each conspirator advancing the common objective of their unlawful scheme all establish a conspiracy between Courtney Love, Sam Lutfi, Jan Yuckman, Butler, and Gaines. Still, further facts supporting conspiracy are: on June 24, 2016, Silva was at the marital premises on Curson Avenue sitting on a chair in the backyard while waiting for Cobain to arrive and move some personal items per an agreement brokered by their respective family law attorneys. Silva was accompanied by his mother Mary, sister Summer, and private investigator Raymond Benuelos. In violation of the agreement, Cobain arrived at the Curson Avenue home in the company of defendant Nazarian, defendant Schenk, and 5 or 6 large men. The men, led by defendant Nazarian and Schenk, rushed up the driveway and confronted Mary, who was standing at the gate. Several of Nazarian's men held their cell phone in their hand as if they were filming. Nazarian was intentionally confrontational with Mary in an apparent effort to provoke Silva and capture his reaction on camera. Silva looked on as Nazarian, accompanied by Schenk, screamed at Mary and acted in an aggressive and threatening manner. Nazarian jabbed his finger in Mary's face and shouted at her. Then, without warning or provocation, Nazarian assaulted Mary by violently shoving the gate into her. The force of Nazarian's assault knocked Mary backwards, where her arm was lacerated by jagged shards of glass that remained in the window that Lutfi broke during his June 3, 2016 home invasion. Mary, Summer, and Silva, in fear for their personal safety, rushed back into the house as Nazarian, Schenk, and their men charged through the gate. Upon witnessing this act of aggression, Banuelos, a retired police officer, called the LAPD for help. Not long afterwards, LAPD officers arrived at the Curson Avenue home. Nazarian approached the officers and presented them with a paper believed to be a copy of the deed for the Curson Avenue house. Nazarian asked the officers to remove Silva from the property. The officers informed Nazarian that he did not have any right to force Silva out of his own home. Nazarian of Nazarian and Associates and Esquire International, the agency, is well known for his illegal and unethical practices, particularly to the Los Angeles family law courts and attorneys representing wives in those courtrooms. Nazarian is the self-proclaimed scum of Hollywood. Among other things, Nazarian teaches women how to make false allegations of abuse to the police, the criminal courts, and the family law courts. Notably, Nazarian teaches women how to get their husbands out of the family residence and teaches them how to gain the upper hand in court proceedings by staging fake crime scenes and filing false police reports with intent of having their husbands falsely arrested. Nazarian has promoted his unlawful scheme and services through YouTube videos such as, quote, how to throw your husband out, divorce advice, end quote. In another video, Nazarian characterizes his work on behalf of the wealthy, stating, quote, the rich and powerful always want their pound of flesh, and we kind of go out and collect it for them. And you pick your worst lawyer that you know, we're 10 floors below him. That's what we get paid to do. Nazarian is an associate of Courtney Love, and she has employed his services since at least 2009. In the instant case, Nazarian was employed for his services by one or more of the conspirators and became part of the conspiracy. Alright guys, the rest of the complaint goes over each of the statutes that were violated. And this is where the narrative as to what happened and the background ends. So I'm going to stop reading here as well. And I'm going to end the video here to let you guys kind of process all of this information, put the story together in your head, and we can reconvene back. I will actually be doing a live where we'll be discussing this particular case and what will happen in this case, kind of where it's at in the courts. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, hit the like button, and leave me a comment to let me know what you think about this case. Also, I will talk to you soon when we go live next week, where we will be discussing this criminal complaint. So I hope I see you there. Happy Mother's Day!